Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, Getting Wilder by the Minute, a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. We're in the midst of Season 1, dedicated to reanimating young Frankenstein. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And our guests today, who have decided to forego their nightly show prep meeting at the all-you-can-eat Denny's buffet, the stars of BK on the Air, BK and Commander Clark.
It's actually Waffle House now.
Denny's has a buffet?
That's right, yeah.
Since when?
Right. Thank you for having us. We're here again. This is fantastic. The Wilder Ride.
We had such a good time yesterday that I figured I don't need sleep tonight.
Well, no, who needs sleep?
Who needs
overrated.
Sleep? Yes.
It's way overrated.
Hey,
too much to do.
When you're a podcaster, you live on caffeine.
Yeah.
Sleep when I'm dead.
Exactly.
Dr. Frankenstein brings you back to life.
That's right, yeah.
Please let me sleep.
Well, when we last left yesterday...
You sound like an old radio play. When we last left...
Well, when we did.
From the Untouchables.
When we last saw our heroes...
I didn't say it quite that way.
Yeah, but that's cool. I like how he does that.
I know, it's good.
Well, I'm just trying to get people all, because it's been 24 hours, right, or maybe longer, or maybe shorter, depending if you're binging. But yesterday, for us, we were talking about the scene in the brain depository, and it ended with a shot of some electrical equipment with a lot of electricity running through it. And that's where we start today, with the labs running their full capacity, sparking and electrical currents running everywhere. And we'll end this minute with Dr. Frankenstein commenting to Igor, "as fast as you can." So there's a lot going on in this minute. And Walt, I'm going to start with you. The last time we panned across the bottom of the table with the creature, we had just pulled the corpse out of the graveyard, and I had a revulsion moment of bare toes as close to the screen as you can possibly get.
Yeah, I think everybody who is like me, not a big fan of feet, that was kind of maybe the most horrifying part of that of this movie.
Had this been 3D, I would have had toes in my nose, and I would have had to leave the theater. It was as close to the edge of the screen as you get without coming out of the screen.
Shades of Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yeah.
It was horrifying.
Feet. You mean smell-o-vision and Kentucky Fried Movie? That would have been pretty bad, yeah. Right. Pure Boyle's feet. Oh,
yeah, no, instead he's got the gigantic...
cow crap in here.
You could have said the other word in the horse one.
I know.
Okay.
The horse is always there to take care of us.
Fish for dinner again?
Stallion sensor. We have on hand here.
Like fish sticks? Love them. What do you do with them? Put them in my mouth. Good. That's what you're supposed to do. Fish sticks. Awesome. Sorry.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew this week was going this direction.
Good.
I expected no less.
Or more. I was hoping for more, but
we were hoping.
No, but we get the pan through the equipment there at the beginning. We get to see the electricity sparking through the equipment. Then we get to see the doctor's tools there, and again that meticulous detail that they have shown throughout the movie. And you really do get the feel that you're in a real medical lab, and
not just the medical lab. You feel like it's Victor Frankenstein's lab.
Something's about to go down.
Right?
You know it.
It's for real.
Yes, it is.
Well, before we get to your note, Mike, because I know we were talking before we started recording that you've got an interesting note coming up. I want to get back to the equipment, since we start off with the lab equipment. And depending when you've come in, you may have missed some of the opening credits or minutes of this podcast. The filmmakers managed to get the actual lab equipment that was used in the 1931 release of Universal's Frankenstein. It's Kenneth Strickfaden's equipment. He was the original designer and had all these pieces in his garage. And he actually quoted it when he was asked about this recently. He said, "Back then, I'd put something together and then marvel at it. The styling depended on what kind of junk I had at hand." Now, the 78-year-old now FX guru was a welcome presence on the... 78 at the time of the filming, was a welcome presence on the set. He actually even invented some new gizmos just for this film. And the last time he'd hauled out all of his toys was for 1973's Blackenstein.
Yep.
Now, Strick Faden's lab props were harmless except for one mysterious gadget. Marty Feldman was quoted as saying, "I don't know what it does, but I'm not going to touch it."
Some people might say that same thing about what Terry Garr stuffed her bra with in the film too. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to touch it. So, yeah, because it wasn't all her.
It was not all her. Yeah.
Wardrobe.
No, I actually read a line where she said I'd push in there anything I could, even if I had leftover like deli meat.
It was a canned ham.
Yeah.
I think it was what it was, and socks and whatever else.
Something.
Yeah.
It was definitely socks, which is typical, but apparently at one point she mentioned deli meat or canned ham to help keep the jugs in the right position.
She stuffed in a ham. How'd she get Mel in there? That must have loved that.
There's the fourth Mel sign.
That's right. That would have.
Hello, boys. I missed you. Wait, wrong movie.
Talking about Kenneth Strick Faden. He's the unsung hero of the film. Not only did this movie mimic Frankenstein, and we consider it kind of a canon sequel.
Right.
How cool was it for him to get the guy who had the equipment to put it in the movie?
Well, it gives it a sense of continuity.
It does.
It's great.
Another film that Kenneth did was the Mask of Fu Manchu, and he also went from that in between, and then later on he did some work on the Munsters on television, believe it or not, because they had a lot of the same stuff on the Munsters. But this guy, he created an effect in The Wizard of Oz, and you could think real hard, you might think of what effect in The Wizard of Oz he did. If you think about it, you got to guess what he did in The Wizard of Oz. Unless one of you's already looked it up.
I have not, and I would guess the cyclone.
Not the cyclone. Think of what he's good at.
Well, no, I was going to say, is it the spark when she goes to do the red shoes? I'm sorry, I was thinking. I don't know.
When
Dorothy wanted to take a guess.
When the witch goes to take her sister's shoes, she gets shocked.
Oh,
it's the electrical shock.
The shock. Okay.
Ken was the queen. Was the king of lightning and light and that lightning arc stuff. That's what.
Okay, you mean when she went to get it from Dorothy?
Or from Dorothy, that's right.
That's where it
she was shocking her. Yeah, that classic. And she goes back from the shock.
That makes sense.
That was Ken. That was Ken doing that. So that was an early optic that I thought. And think of that. That was in '39. Wizard of Oz was 1939. So we're talking about special effects from way back. 30. That's amazing.
Yeah, 31.
It's amazing about how special effects were done back then, and every one of those films. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because the computers back then were the size of like VW bugs or something, weren't they? They were really huge back then.
Airplane hangars.
Computers were the big as the state of Delaware back then. Yeah. They were really big.
Yeah, it looks so fake.
He did pass across the feet. This time, instead of bare feet.
Thank God for you.
Thankfully, yes.
It looks as though the corpse that they have procured for this particular experiment has got some pretty heavy boots on.
Yes, they do. Well, and I went through, guys, and I didn't know if anybody's done this. I counted the nails.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
You were the only person who's ever done that.
I safely say yes.
I paused it right there, and it was fun because they're not in straight lines and stuff. So
how long did it take you to do it? Did you have to sit there and mark it on the television?
I at one point I had a piece of paper on the screen, and I was marking them through the paper to make sure I got them all. My next question is, if
you connect them, what do you get?
Whatever I want.
Okay, I thought it was some kind of picture.
Did you all want to try to guess? Because there are different numbers for each shoe.
No, I'm gonna. Yep. Hey, I'm not. No, actually, up. I'm gonna do a total.
To be honest, I have it on here. There is a total, but I also said the top section and then the heel. I broke it out to tell you how many are in each one.
You see why you have this man on the podcast? There you go.
I am a nerd. I like lists.
This is great because I would have never thought. I actually have something I want to say about it, but let's play the game.
All right. So the right foot.
BK?
Okay. Yeah. I'm doing the whole guess. I'm gonna say that there's at least 260 total. That's my guess. Of nails.
Nope.
Well, I know. No.
You are an idiot.
No, I want to see. Well, you know if I'm close. Alan, was yours total for the shoe or just the top?
It was 50 for the right. For the total for the right.
For the right. Okay, so you were low. You for both are
kind of high.
Over, yes, because you said 260.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so you're over a bit. Walt?
I'm going to go with 64.
On just the right?
On just the right.
All right, the right shoe. On the top half, there are 57. On the heel, there are 33 for a total of 90.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So do I win?
So it's 90 on both.
No.
Oh, no, for just one.
The left is slightly different.
I was close without going over.
On the left shoe, the top half has 66. The bottom has 35 on the heel, so for 101.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
The grand
There's more on the left?
Yeah, there is. It's weird. Is 191. That's what I counted. And again, I did it by hand. It was hard to tell because I did do it a couple times. This is the numbers I got twice. Okay. So I figured they were the closest.
You actually did the task twice.
I wanted to make sure I was right.
Do we have an award? We need an award bell. I'm going to put a little timer.
And you need an award because you got
too much time on your hands award.
Right.
Yeah,
I wish I had a life.
I win the trip to Arby's.
I should have bet $1.
All I kept thinking was if I owned a pair of shoes like that, I wouldn't have to pay to have my lawn aerated.
No, you would not.
I could just walk behind the normal lawnmower every time I cut the grass, and it's perfectly fine.
And you sure as heck couldn't go through the airport.
Who made the shoes? Where did they get them?
We're in Transylvania. We talked about
the head
Henchman
shop.
R Us.
I know we've got all that.
So maybe they sell it at Henchman R Us, or maybe they've got big bad guys shoe emporium.
Yeah,
cleated carnival shoes.
Cleated carnival shoes.
Shoes by John Merrick.
No,
All right. All right.
All right.
Well, and they don't even look like they've been worn before.
No, they're brand new. Of course they're brand new.
Of course they're new.
Well, sure, you're not going to put
old
shoes on your
ruin the whole point
Frankenstein
of the movie.
monster.
But yeah, those are some big loafers too.
Yes.
Well, what I do know is
what you say about big feet, right?
Peter Boyle is already 6'2", and these were platform boots that added an additional 3 inches to his height, making him 6'5" overall for this film. He also, and you can tell the stuffing here, to help him plod and move a little bit more difficult, the extra baggage that he's wearing to make him look thicker, wider, and bigger added 125 pounds in costuming to Peter Boyle's wardrobe.
Wow. And then I have full head makeup.
Much like Boris Karloff.
Miserable.
Had a lot added to him, too.
Oh,
So this movie mirrored Frankenstein in a lot of ways.
It did.
Now, more than we behind the scenes.
It's taken me years to put 125 extra pounds to make me lumber along.
It takes longer to take them off. I'm telling you right now.
Now, here is an interesting note. You talked about the rights initially, yesterday that you were talking about rights and things between the films. One of the stipulations of making this movie when they were making The Monster could not have the flat top
squared
head.
off face.
Yeah. Could not do that. The same
really?
head.
Universal is very protective of the classic Jack Pierce likenesses.
Right.
And so I'm not surprised. Even Hammer couldn't get it when
Hammer
they did
Films wanted to do their Frankenstein with Christopher Lee. They said, nope, you cannot use that look for Frankenstein. So they're very well guarded with that.
So was the Munsters a Universal?
It may have
I
been.
think it was a Universal.
I think it's MCA Universal.
It has to be that because he's the
pretty
only other
close.
Frankenstein that's not a Frankenstein movie that has that same flat head.
Yeah. All right. And of course, now we're panning up, and that table that the monster is laying on, you'll see the bars across them kind of holding him in place. That's more reminiscent of the table in Bride of Frankenstein in the original because they have to flip those out and stuff. So I thought, okay, so they're working all the Frankenstein movies in here.
Well, that's something I've discovered going through the research of how Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks, as the two of them basically hammered out the script. Gene Wilder wrote the 8-page treatment that got Mel interested, and they talked about it, and then they worked on the script together. There are pieces of all 4 of the original Universal movies in this. From Elizabeth's hairstyle, which was, of course, the streak in the hair.
The bride.
Much later in the movie. That comes from Bride of Frankenstein, right?
The Bride, yeah.
And so you've got the table from Son of
Apparently the
Frankenstein.
electricity did that too.
And I forgot what I read that came from Ghost, but they borrowed heavily from all of the movies in places here. So that way it's almost like an homage to the original 4 films.
Which I think I read they said it's kind of a sequel, but not really. But it is in my book. I don't care.
Now, as the camera pans over Peter Boyle lying there on the gurney table, we first see him. There's a violin bit of music on the soundtrack that plays for just only a second. There's no music before it, and there's none after it. It lasts for about 5 or 6 seconds. That is not on as far as I can tell, that's not on the score for the film that John Morris did, that one little bit of music. It does, however, sound to me very much like stock music from Filmation Studios from the cartoons that they used.
Really?
That little rising violin. I can play you guys some of it later on, but there's some music from Filmation that they had stock music that they would use for a lot of animation. That sounds like a track from there. I want to look that up and just see because I've not been able to find it anywhere online about anyone
Could
saying
be because
talking
back then
about it.
Filmation was still pretty big.
It was, and that music in that scene isn't on the soundtrack, and it's not anywhere else in the film. And it's not part of a long piece of music. It's just very quick and very slow.
And it's emblematic of,
Right.
Here's the monster.
It's showing his face,
Yeah.
panning over him. So, yeah.
And as we hear off screen, the doctor and Inga first saying he's hideous, and Dr. Frankenstein, he's beautiful. We're right on the actual makeup and what looks like the residual stitching and or post-operative markings on the sides of his head.
Yeah, the 4 stitches where they rammed the brain through.
I guess.
I was kind of wondering how they got the brain through that small hole.
Well, it was a smaller brain, I guess. I don't know. Well, no, and it is reminiscent of the Jack Pierce makeup, but not quite because it's not the flat top. The makeup was done by a gentleman named William Tuttle, who
That's a familiar name.
Yep, he worked on some other things. Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, which he won an honorary Oscar before makeup was given an Oscar. Also Forbidden Planet, the 1960 Time Machine.
Which is a great movie. Great
several episodes of The Twilight Zone, including Eye of the Beholder, where he did the pig face makeup.
And also including a certain fuzzy teddy bear on the wing of an airplane that William Shatner was looking at outside the jet.
Very
That's
much so.
William
He
Tuttle,
passed away in 2007. Make sure my notes are right here. Yes, 2007 at age 95.
Wow.
But he worked on a lot of stuff.
Well, talking about the makeup in this movie, with it being in black and white, I know they have to do different things, and y'all are probably more familiar with that. But the makeup on him as you look at that monster laying on the table is perfect. Oh, yeah. It just looks, so perfectly Frankenstein, even though the head's not squared off. But it is a great monster scene. There's nothing left out here. This is a very believable, again, monster movie scene that they plug in here. And
it is horrific looking.
It is horrific.
It's also green, like in the original 31. Yeah. If it was in color, the makeup is green to give it the grayish black tone.
Well, they had to, exactly, for the black and white. They wanted it to look pale, so they had to have a light, almost a mint bluish green hue to his makeup.
Yep.
And I'm convinced Peter Boyle never had hair.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Anything he was ever in. And later on, he didn't have hair.
See, I don't think he takes the cap off in Outland. So
I haven't seen him in a lot of movies. He's done some, but Peter Boyle is not he's not an actor that I've seen him in a whole lot of films. I've seen him in this. I've seen him in, he did the TV show,
Everybody Loves Raymond.
He did Outland with Sean Connery, which he played a real guy there. He was an evil guy. But whatever he's ever been in, he's always did a great job, and he's always awesome because Mel, they were asking, I think he asked Mel, how am I going to get any character out of this Frankenstein character? What am I going to be able to do if I can't move in places? Right. He goes, he moves his eyes.
Well, he moves his eyes.
His whole face can tell what mood that he's in
the grunting.
As a monster. So I think he did a great job.
It's phenomenal.
Underrated actor.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, he's a
funny you talk about the hairline with Peter Boyle here. I've got a note, and this is appropriate to bring it up here. Young Frankenstein was actually a consolation prize, a very good and lucky one for Peter Boyle. He'd actually been top choice for Paul Newman's role in The Sting until Newman confirmed he'd rather have that role, in which case Peter Boyle, who was in the lead to have that, was kicked out of the running for it.
Wow.
He said, in high school, I wanted to be a leading man, but then God saw fit to take the hair off of my head at age 24.
Oh, wow.
So, I was off by a few years.
Yeah, you're off by a couple years.
24. Wow. Well, I couldn't see Paul Newman as the creature.
No.
That's for sure. It'd been a really nice
No, that would have been a weird choice.
So, yeah.
Well, apparently afterwards, and I didn't know this, Peter Boyle actually had thought about and had just quit the monastery. He had actually thought maybe a calling for the man of the cloth was where he'd be going.
Be a monk.
When he said, quote, I felt that call for a while. Then I felt the pull of the world and the flesh.
I think there are many young men who can attest to that.
I'm sure the money wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
Going all in, he decided to join Chicago's Second City Troupe before moving to Broadway. He was inspired by the '68 Democratic Convention to become a war protester, and despite his liberal politics and flair for comedy, Boyle often played the hate monger. Besides Joe, he played a blowhard in Taxi Driver, a bigot in Monsters Ball, saying, quote, I've done the angry blue-collar guy so often, it's just easy for me.
Let's see how it would sound. Hello, Father Boyle? No, it just doesn't have a ring to it.
It doesn't have a
ring at all.
No, only if he's a slasher hiding in the monastery.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's Father Boyle. Run.
Well, and he is interesting because he plays that part. I think here he's one of the strongest Frankensteins that I can think of, but he's also great on Everybody Loves Raymond as the father, and he has that kind of curmudgeon, crusty, fatherly thing with a little bit of a soft heart.
Kind of like some of us. Yeah, now,
definitely like some of us. So I can really relate to him. I can relate to the monster.
Right, yes.
Dad, exactly.
Like
but
my dad.
He is, you do see the diversity of talent within him and the real comic skill that he has here.
But how fascinating it is for you to give him so big kudos of being one of the best Frankenstein monsters on film. I would think he is too. He does a great job just playing the monster against everybody else who's ever played the monster. And it's a comedy, and we've talked about how it's got that balance of comedic horror, paying homage to Frankenstein. But he does. To me, he is one of on the list of the best Frankensteins monsters. Yeah,
no, I agree with that too. And he's not even evil. You do feel sorry for him, and that's the best part of a Frankenstein monster. If it's written right and it's being acted right, you're not afraid of them or anything. You feel sorry for them, or you feel sympathy towards that.
Because the doctor's the monster.
And the doctor's really the monster in it. And he does that very well, too. Even when he makes mistakes and does something maybe evil, you still are like, well, he just doesn't know. It's okay.
I love my pretty little flower.
I know. You're jumping ahead again.
I know. We're out of himself to throw in the well.
Well, since we can chat about this for a second, because we're also looking back at the 31 Frankenstein.
Yes.
In a way, Frankenstein, when he is eventually brought to life in the original, was basically birthed like a child. The memories and things weren't necessarily there. It's almost like Blade Runner. They didn't have any padding for him to be able to deal with emotions and deal with new things and seeing things and being in this body. It was almost like he was a creation. He was a creation.
He was a child.
So very childlike. He didn't know. And so, as we all know, thankfully, children don't come out, 6 foot, 5 and with 60. What did he say? He goes, you put a. Well, we're not going to give it in a gorilla. They don't come out looking like a gorilla. So thankfully, when they throw their tantrums, we can control them. But when you're this big and you throw a tantrum, it's a scary thing.
Oh, yeah.
Walt and I had this conversation this week. We were talking about the monster versus the doctor. And it made me mad as a kid because I took my Halloween and my Halloween costume seriously. I'd go see Ben Cooper Halloween costumes.
Right.
And the Frankenstein costume would always say, on the monster, it would say, Frankenstein. And I'm like, that's not Frankenstein. That's the monster. That's Frankenstein's monster. That's his creation.
Exactly.
And they make you want to think that that's the monster called Frankenstein.
Well, then Ben Cooper would make it hideous with blood dripping out of its mouth.
That's
and I'm like,
not
that
how
never
it
happened.
But the way Alan talks about it, that's true in almost every one of the films. Even more so in Kenneth Branagh's version, the birthing scene of him coming to life and just learning who he is, and it's almost like a baby, And it's right, it's very innocent.
Well, and I think one of the striking things for me about this scene that we're looking at today and the similar scene in the original 31. In 31, he put together the monster. He had hands from one corpse, a leg from another corpse, and he kind of built this monster, put the brain in him, brought him to life, and he was... it was a god complex on steroids. And here we kind of see the same thing because Inga says he's hideous, and he says he's beautiful, and he's mine. And he puts his hands on his head, and you see in a really strong way how not only has he bought into the Frankenstein family history here, but he's also bought the God complex. Well, and he sees himself as the creator of life here.
There is a difference. He's not putting together a body with parts, though. It's still the same body, though.
Right.
That is a difference. But yes, you can very much see that pendulum for him internally has shifted from skeptic to I'm all in. There is no hesitation. When we talked about that, it's a flip of a switch for him. It happens almost immediately on screen. Reading the book that night when they discover in the hidden library, he is reading, and all of a sudden, it could work. And he's got the circles under his eyes. His hair is more messed up than even normal Gene Wilder hair. And we realize everything clicks, and he's all in. He never looks back.
Yeah, and he really does see himself as the creator of this life. And, he sees himself now in that God complex.
And the fact that we can compare this movie, which is a comedy by Mel Brooks, to the seriousness of Frankenstein and whatnot, the way we do, the way it is, the way it pays homage, I think is shows what a great film this is. Or if it wasn't, it was just a straight slapstick comedy goofball Frankenstein film, we wouldn't be able to talk about it like this.
No.
Or have a podcast. Where we
Not
talk
at
about
all.
it minute by minute. It's that good.
Yeah, and I love, I'm a big Airplane fan and The Naked Gun and things like that. I do love that kind of goofy, crazy comedy. But this is this really speaks to me. This really is kind of a shocking scene because you do realize that twist that has happened in his brain. And he fought it and fought it and fought it. But now in those just few minutes, that subtle shift has happened, and he is on that track.
Well, I think we all identify with being a big lumbering monster wanting a girl at one point or another.
With a God complex.
We just want to be loved.
One of us is either the monster or the doctor. Which one it is, I don't know. Whoever you think it is. So.
Well, as we move past that line about, and he's mine, he shouts up, ready? And we immediately cut to a scene of Igor dressed like the Gordon's fisherman
Yes.
with a pair of double kites. And apparently, now, when my kites did what his kites are doing, they always crashed. I mean, when they
Yes.
go
Yeah.
nose, the top of the kite goes nose down, it ain't coming back.
And if you'd had these kites, it'd have been a double crash.
Well,
Exactly.
exactly.
Just two of them. I mean, it would have been worse.
But, Mike, you said something when we were getting ready for this minute. The double kite thing is an accurate reflection of what was in the other movie.
In the 31 Frankenstein, now they're not together like they are in Young Frankenstein, but it's two kites that are anchored to the castle in the 31 film, and they're kind of multi-level kites. They're a lot bigger than those little funny ones. But so,
Not the ones you get at the 7-Eleven?
No,
Aren't
you
they kind of the boxy kites, right?
Yeah, it
The
is.
real old-fashioned type kites.
Kind of like that.
The
And
ones that we could never operate.
it's how they did it, which I think he's saying this is the 31 film, so we're
Paying homage again.
paying homage to it again.
In terms of black and white, while the kite's flying, I love the matte paint behind him, the scenery painting of the sky, the darkened clouds. They don't move, but the scene is so quick, we don't need them to move, but we get the sense of the layers and textures of a really violent approaching thunderstorm.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it has that old look, like the Wizard of Oz clouds in the background. It's that old painting
it
of
does.
clouds in the background. It has that look.
Well, again, and it's very serious, even though the kites are a little silly. It's not funny. Haha, you're rolling the
Right.
floor, but it's this tension is now building because now you're getting into the creation scene. That's what's coming.
It's almost like sometimes you're watching this and you forget it's a comedy.
You do.
You're actually into the story.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's a Frankenstein story.
definitely.
Oh, but it happens. That's funny.
Yeah, that was funny.
It's back to the story. It's so well done.
As the doctor gets ready to move away from the body, you hear Igor yell back down, "Are you sure this is how they did it?"
Yes.
And yes. He says, in fact, it's
in
all written down in the notes. Now tie off the kites to the lightning attractor, which is a little different,
Yes.
and get down here as fast as you can. Igor says, which I think is as an addition, "Well, what's the hurry?" And Freddy yells back in the original script, "There's the possibility of electrocution." Then, "Do you understand?" And then, so there's some lines trimmed here and there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But the basic conversation here, he's got Igor up there trying to tie off these kites to attract the lightning to get ready for this procedure they're about to undertake.
But the lightning may strike at any moment, so
And
you
through
need
the-
to hurry.
and through the wonderful power of editing,
Yes.
Igor is down with them.
Suddenly downstairs. And they
Suddenly,
like,
very
wait, weren't
quickly.
you just up there? I love Terry
Yeah,
Garr's
but-
expression in that scene, too,
Came
because
down
she's
here
really confused.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking with this scene, the whole lab is, it is wired.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting more electricity than, Yankee Stadium. Why do they need the kite? Flying it into the
Are you
into
saying the lab
thunderstorm?
is very strict fading?
It is very
It
strict.
certainly is.
Fading.
I actually have a question about that I was going to ask. But before I do that, because I think you bring up the lightning in general, I think every one of the iterations I think I've ever seen, and there's probably some that don't, almost all of them rely on lightning or electricity to reanimate tissue.
Right.
I have never seen one that did not.
Well, the
Have at least
Edison silent film, the original film,
That's right.
was chemicals.
Right, because the first film,
Oh,
Frankenstein, was 1910 with Thomas Edison directing it. And
Mhm.
I have
Silent
a
film.
copy of that, yeah.
But other than that, I
Very
believe you're
interesting.
correct. It's all
Yep.
electricity or lightning.
Well, according to Mary Shelley's novel, the source material from whence all the Frankenstein iterations come, the doctor's methods are actually never revealed. Lightning and electrical jolts were merely Hollywood's favorite interpretation of how to accomplish the
And
task.
it's
Well,
darn
30
cool.
It is cool. And 31, electricity was fairly new, wouldn't
Oh,
it?
not every home had electricity, even
Exactly.
in 31.
So that was fascinating to those audiences then.
So the question I have for you, Walt, And it's not coming up till the next minute. But we know there's electricity earlier because they turned the lights on overhead. So there's already power coming through. They've cleaned off all the equipment. They've got everything running. In the next minute, and I just think about it for next minute, he says, turn on the generator. Well, if you've got a generator, the heck you need lightning for?
I'll answer that in a minute.
In a minute. Think about that. Things like this, they bug me.
They do. They bug me,
because there's
too.
another piece about this that bugs me. You've got one kind of power source providing one type of electricity. We all have electrical components in our home. How well do those play along with lightning bolts crashing into your house?
They do not. I had an entire insurance claim over that.
You too, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got issues. We're going to have to talk about it next minute. But right now, we're still up there as we start to wrap up the minute. We've still got Igor upstairs. He's still trying to tie off the kite. We've got the doctor really, really focused, and he's taking his gloves off. He's got Inga with him. And that's where we end the minute, where we are just ready to see whether or not Igor is going to get struck by lightning or not. We see him in his Gordon Fisherman's outfit looking down through the giant hole in the ceiling, where apparently the table that the creature is on must be somehow that's the table we'll eventually see go up through that opening. So I don't have anything left on my notes. BK, do you have anything that we did not cover in minute 42?
Well, nothing that I can get into this in the next minute too. The director of photography and whatnot, who are responsible for how the film looks, along with director Mel Brooks. But I think that this actual scene, if this is the first scene that we see the lab actually lit up with its strict faddenness. I'm sorry saying that. It's his fault that it looks that way. I think it just lends more credibility to the movie once we got to see this, and especially when I saw it the first time, I'm like, wow, that looks a whole lot like Frankenstein that I saw many years ago. As a kid, I did not know that they broke all of this equipment out from the original guy to get him back. So I think this scene is one of the ones that really cements the film as being, this is a Frankenstein film, whether you like it or not.
Commander Clark, what about you? Anything on your notes besides counting the dimples on the bottom of a shoe?
No. They're called dimples? I did not know that.
Well, they look like
I call them nails.
Yeah, they're probably,
Tacks.
that's probably better. Dimples are what's on a golf ball. I was just thinking about walking around the golf course with those or something. They look like putting shoes, maybe.
Yeah, they do. And yeah, they've definitely got some grip to them.
I counted the straps on Terry Graw's bra too. So
you did?
that
okay.
next minute.
Next time.
Only 2. It was easier to count.
Yeah,
and I didn't mind that homework.
No.
Anything though in your notes?
No, we got it all, believe it or not.
And Walt, what about you? Anything we forgot?
There was one quote right at the end when Igor is up in the perch there. Dr. Frankenstein, almost Frankenstein, says, "We're fighting time and elements." And I think I know what he's talking about. I would speculate that what he was saying is that if we don't make this happen today, we're going to have spoilage on the monster, and we're not going to have this opportunity again.
And the storm will be
the storm will be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
The monster will rot, and we will be out of business.
And it's not a comedic line. That's a down to earth dramatic line. Yeah.
Well, it's to help raise the tension too. It's like we have to get all this done.
Definitely.
And ironic you bring that line up, is not from the original script, something that they changed and added in that moment.
Wow, don't they change scripts for a reason sometimes? They just get better.
What we're finding surprising is when they've done it, it's been for the right reason, and it's been very few and far between. They've taken far more out than either ad-libbed or added on the scene. There's only been a handful so far, and we're at minute 42. I think we've only had 3 or 4 ad-libs that have made it, but we've seen a whole lot removed from the original script.
Sounds like a lot of good decisions.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
so far, I'm not arguing with any of them that they've made.
No.
All right, well, we are done with this minute. We've still got a few more minutes in the laboratory with this experiment that we need to get to, but we'll have to wait until tomorrow. Before we get to that, BK, you've got a radio show. This is something you love talking about it. You've often called it a dose of nostalgic geekiness. Where can people learn about BK on the air?
We do, 10 a.m. till noon every Saturday on WBHF Radio. You can listen to it by going to WBHFradio.org is the website. From there, you can click a link and listen live, or you can download the free TuneIn app and listen to us that way. We talk about exactly that every Saturday, and we have a good time doing it.
Well, BK,
what if we talk about it?
What if it's like Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon, and I think, I missed BK on the air this week. Is there any place I can listen to you?
Well, you're good out of luck then, I guess, if you missed it. That is
Okay.
Hold it. That's not true. I just want to see if the stallion sensor would work there, and he did. So no, if you download another app called SoundCloud, you can hear us on SoundCloud. It's up there all week. The show from Saturday, so you can hear us even if you miss us.
So just do a search for BK on the air.
BK on the air. That's correct. And Twitter and Instagram. Just search for BK on the air, and you'll find us.
Walt, where can people find us when we're not dodging lightning bolts and listening to the rumble of thunder and looking up the skirt, I guess, of Igor as he's dressed like the Gordon's Fisherman?
The Gordon's Fisherman.
Yes.
Yeah, the best place to find us. Do I like fish sticks? Just look at me.
I am Aquaman, but I am not a gay fish. Do you like fish sticks? Love them. Do you put them in your mouth? Yes, you're a gay fish. I am not a gay fish.
I'm going to put Walt's laugh as my ringtone on my phone.
Yes.
By the way, I love it so much.
Scare everybody around you.
I love it.
So where can people learn a little bit more about the Wilder Ride?
The best place to find us is www.thewilderride.com. From there, you can find our Facebook page. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on all the other great places around the internet, including places like Stitcher and iTunes, where you can listen to the podcast. And we would really appreciate it if you are listening on iTunes. If you wouldn't mind taking a second just to rate the show. If you like what you're hearing, please give us 5 stars. Make a quick comment so that your vote gets counted and more people can find us when they're searching for us.
And if you really are a friend of the show and you want to help us out a little bit, check out our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. We have several tiers of support open to you if you'd like to help us out. So we'd appreciate you stopping by and checking it out. So come back tomorrow for minute number 43, where we begin the episode with the line, "What's the hurry?" And we end with Inga rubbing her hand on Dr. Frankenstein's hand. What's going on there? So join us here again tomorrow for The Wilder Ride.
Trust the Igor fisherman.
How do I cook them? I don't know. Maybe we can harness the lightning and use the electric fryer.
Well, Frankenstein.